So in this video, we're going to create a process that's going to run over the rocks one at a time and allow us to process them to reduce the appearance of these little spikes and shards, which don't really feel very rock-like. So to do that, we're going to put down a for each connected piece node, and this is going to create this little network that is already made for you. And we can see if we look at the end, it's going to think for a second and say that it's run over 2,150 pieces. So how do we know there's 2,150 pieces? Well, that comes from this connectivity node, which has created an attribute called class on the geometry. So we go to the spreadsheet, we can see that on the primitives, we have this new attribute called class. We could have also used the piece name, but I think we're going to stick with class for now. And we can go ahead actually, just for the interest, we can go ahead and say we want to randomly color from the attribute class all of the primitives. We can see now that every single rock has its own color, and the weirder ones now jump out even more. So, okay, what was the point of doing that? Well, the point of doing that was to be able to create a process that runs over each rock individually. So keep the color, because why not? So first of all, to avoid blowing up the PC, we're going to say that we only want to do a single pass for now, while we're just testing this out. And we're going to go ahead and wire in the VDB from polygons and the convert VDB. And you can see that actually, even this simple step here of just converting to a VDB back again has sort of removed those kind of sharp corners a little bit. And that's really helpful. And that's really a factor of the voxel size. So as the voxel size gets smaller, we're going to preserve more of that original detail, which we do want to do because we don't want to just remove detail. We only really care about removing the sharp parts. Okay, so how can we remove the sharp bits? Well, what we can do is we can use VDB reshape SDF, and we go to the VDB reshape SDF. We can use the erosion mode, and we can set this to 1. Okay, this is going to sort of shrink the actual rock as well a little bit. So if we look at the before and the after, you can see that it shrunk it slightly, but it has removed some of those kind of weird parts. The only issue is that we're also getting up these little floating pieces of geometry. So what we can do then is put in another VDB reshape SDF, and this time we're going to set this one to dilate. Okay, so we're eroding by 1 unit and we're dilating by 1 unit. So this is a slightly strange idea, but what it does is it essentially rounds off any really sharp corners, and it's also going to remove any bridges between very thin parts of the geometry. So I'm quite happy with this. And I'm also quite happy with the fact that we still now have this kind of planated, triangulated appearance to the rock, because these planes are kind of important to give the character of a rock, and we can add some more detail to break this up later. Okay, so are we going to turn off single pass? Well, not yet. We want to get a good sense of how long the process is going to take before we let it run over the full geometry. So I'm going to set the max iterations to 10 and turn off the single pass. And yeah, it doesn't really struggle with 10 pieces. So what about 50 pieces? Okay, still going pretty quickly, and we can inspect a wider range of the rocks that are being passed through this processor now. So we can still see there are some pretty sharp shards coming through. And to deal with this, we can try and go and increase the dilation amount and the redilation that happens afterwards. We can also go and change the voxel size a little bit. So this will be now a lossy process, more than it was before, but I think there's a balance to be struck depending on the kind of rocks you want to make. And this is feeling okay for me, but maybe we can turn down the erosion amount now and the dilation amount. No, so I think a value of 2 for both dilate and erode is getting us closer to what I want, with a resolution of 0.2, so that's about 20 centimeters in the voxel grid. And yeah, that's okay. I'm okay with these kind of weird shapes. I just didn't really want those sharp shards to exist too much, because they were not looking very good to me. So if I set the max iterations to 200 now, remember there's about 2,000 pieces, you can see we get a sense for how long this is going to take with 2,000. It's going to take about 10 times as long as it just did, which is maybe okay, but still going to feel a little bit slow. So this is where compiled blocks can come into the frame. If we create a compiled block, it's going to treat this whole block, this whole unit of operations, as kind of one operation, and it's only going to copy the memory once. So, you know, there's quite a lot of geometry here, and every node in Houdini creates a copy of that geometry, and things can start to get a little bit slow and sticky. In addition to that, you can see that the for each end down here actually has an option called multi-thread when compiled. And this is really the secret sauce for making networks that run a lot faster when iterating over a lot of elements. So we're going to go and turn on multi-thread when compiled. And then I'm just going to hit manual while I set up the network. So I'm going to drag the compile block on the begin with the for loop and after the for loop like so. And now we're going to say on mouse up. And now you can see that it's almost instantly run all of those operations. And the same is going to be true when we turn off the max iterations. You can see just how fast it's blasting through all of those different rocks. So now we've done the whole network. It's just writing that back to geometry now at the end of the compile block. And I may have made a slight mistake here. I'm curious if anyone can guess it. Well, we have processed all of this geometry, but if we look at the geometry density now, you can see that it's become very high. So we had a little pause there after all the operations were run, as it was sort of writing it back to geometry at the end of the compile block. And really we want to be dealing with a lighter representation of the geometry still. So I'm going to go to the convert VDB, and we're going to set the adaptivity to something low, just 0.1. And this is a nice feature of the convert VDB node, is that it will allow you to be a bit more sparing with the polygons that created from your voxel network. And we should also see that the write back process is much, much faster now, so that we have pretty much the same appearance, but with way less polygons, way less memory, and a much faster arrival at the end result. So, you know, this is all somewhat quick and fast, but just to really call out, we're not really seeing as many of those like spiky forms as we were before, which I'm quite happy about. You know, we can go and have a look at the before and after. We were getting a lot of these kind of weird little shapes, but this little process now keeps the volumes as they were before, to largely speaking. We do lose some of the smaller, you know, those smaller pieces that were sharper. So you could address that, but I think in the interest of time, we're going to just say that we're happy with this. Maybe we can slightly increase the resolution to try and preserve some of those smaller features. And you can see that it now takes a little bit longer again. But we keep a little bit more of those kind of sharper elements. And you could also, if you wanted to, you could try and switch over from operation erode to operation open and close. And we can just have a little look at the difference here. If we switch from erode dilate to open and close. So there's a subtle difference. The shapes might have been preserved slightly better with open and close, but the risk is always then that you're going to preserve more of those sharp features that we were trying to get rid of. So it's really up to you which approach you think is best for the style of rocks you're trying to create, and I encourage you to just experiment. All right, that's it for the kind of removal of the sharp parts, and next up we're going to move on to some further detailing.